What's going on, you guys? Welcome to the Unlock Your Freedom podcast with Kevin Kepple. If you're looking to create more in your life, and if you want more of anything, it's not about doing more, it's about being more. So I'm excited you're here, and I'll see you guys on the inside. Man, I was really excited to connect with you here, Marc. I actually form a client of yours, so I know the excellence and brilliance you bring, and man, for the past decade, you've been helping coaches really bring their greatest work into the world, so to speak, and find more people to serve. And I'd love to know the why behind the business you've built.
Yeah, time flies, eh? I was mentioning before we came on air, it'll be 10 years for me as a coach in March of 24, and it feels like 5 years, maybe 6.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy. So in a nutshell, the whole reason I'm doing what I'm doing, I basically a business coach, and I'm focusing solely on coaches. That's what I've been doing for almost a decade. And the reason why is, there's a few big reasons, but the big one, I went through a bad business closure back in my past through real estate. I built up a good sized business, had a lot of employees and a couple locations, and it was hockey stick growth. I'm in Canada, so we'll use a hockey metaphor, hockey stick growth every year. And then everything just came collapsing like a house of cards. And I had never worked with a coach up until that point. I probably should have, because things could have ended differently. But after that happened, I explored the coaching world, hired a couple coaches, and it got help that way. So I had a front row seat for what coaches do. And then when I was ready to get back up and going, back into business, I thought, wow, coaching would be a good one where I've experienced this and I can see what good coaches can do with clients. So that's really my why is, even though I'm working solely with coaches, I hate to see any entrepreneur struggle. I think entrepreneurs don't get the credit they deserve. And the sleepless nights and, not sure if they're going to make payroll, and they're creating all this jobs, everything else in the economy, but they get run down a lot by, politicians or other people. They're always the big bad entrepreneur, greedy entrepreneurs. And so I don't like to see coaches or entrepreneurs struggle. And that's been a big part of what I do.
Yeah, and I know part of the way you help people grow their business is without ads, without these crazy funnels. And, those two things have been the bane of my existence and many others in the past, I'm sure. So I'd love to hear your ideas around that.
Yeah, it's funny because when people hear me say that, some people start defending ads, like, oh, well, I know so-and-so, or I've done ads and it's given an ROI. And I'm not saying that ads don't work, by the way. When I say it, I'm just saying that there's many ways to skin a cat, right? You can build your business many different ways. It doesn't have to be ads. I mean, there's also people who do a combination, of ads plus organic, even though I'm doing with my clients solely organic. Just something I've heard, and especially in the last few years from people, is that ads are getting a little trickier, the numbers from them, or people are having to add an organic component, not just the ads, hands off, turn on the tap and money and clients come in. They have to do some work organically communicating with people to get engagement and other stuff like that. So not saying that you ads don't work. Sometimes it does. I do hear a lot of horror stories of people who've lost tens of thousands of dollars with ads trying to figure them out. So it's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah, I would second that for sure. It is not something you can plug and play, in my experience, and have a ton of success. And so I know that one of the ways that you've probably grown your business dramatically is with the Coaching Jungle, your Facebook group. And that's how I found you. And I think last time I saw it, there was over 21,000 members in there. Is it still?
Yeah, it's like almost 25,000 now.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, she's grown.
So, obviously that's still a viable option for people having a Facebook group. And I've had a couple of groups that were just a few hundred, but it was really great because if nothing else, I got to help a lot of people and see other people helping each other. And I thought that community piece was so profound. And so if somebody's listening.
Yeah, groups of full disclosure too, people who have groups will probably agree with me, but groups in Facebook groups the last few years, it takes a little more work to get the engagement going, and the reach isn't what it once was. Now I'm still a big fan of Facebook groups, or at least I should say I'm a fan of communities. So if your people aren't on Facebook, it doesn't make sense to be building a Facebook group. But I have clients who are using School, SKOOL, to build communities. I have a client who's really big on a past client, really big on Mighty Networks. He swears by it. So I say you just need a place to gather people, if not Facebook groups, at least somewhere. But yeah, the group's been great. It's been going since the fall of 2015. And, I've met some incredible people in there, clients, JV partners, people I consider friends. So yeah, I having fun with it.
What's something, if you had a time machine and you could go back to past Marc when he's starting a Facebook group, what would you tell him not to do?
Geez, I don't want to sound egotistical to say there's nothing I would do differently. I can't. Nothing really stands out that I would say, "Oh, boys, I wish I hadn't done that." And I'm not saying it to be cocky because I've made plenty of mistakes through my business life. So there's lots of those. But when it comes to the Facebook group, I think I've built it probably the best way that I could. Sometimes you hear people saying, yeah, I started a group and I named it wrong or had the wrong niche or the wrong focus, and that ate up some time. Now, business-wise, there's been a few things that I've tried that I wasn't feeling. It just wasn't working, and I decided to kill it off. I always say you can't be afraid to slay the sacred cows. So I had a Alexa flash briefing, for example. I don't know if you've seen those, quick 30-second, 1-minute flash briefing every day for a year. So I did 365 or whatever of those. Decided to kill it off because I was like, I just wasn't feeling it. Yeah. I had a solo podcast before, and from doing podcasts, in addition to Natural Born Coaches, I had the Marc Mawhinney show, which was solo. Solo is 5 times the amount of work, or maybe more, because you're not having conversations, which kind of helps take the load off. You're creating all yourself. So after a year of that, I pulled back because, I just didn't have the bandwidth for it. So nothing that changed with the group, but I've made other changes in my business as needed.
Well, let's talk about JVs a little bit. I know that joint ventures is something that you're pretty spectacular at because I've heard you talk about it, and the depth of knowledge just when you kind of speak off the cuff, shows me really a profound understanding. And I'd love maybe just give us a working idea of what that is first off, and then maybe some best practices around really having productive partnerships with other people.
Sure. So I do my joint ventures different than most. Most people joint venture, I approach you, I say, hey, Kevin, I have a brand new ABC program, which I think would be great for your audience. Why don't you promote it? Send some emails around, social media posts, whatever. I'll pay you 25% of each sale that comes from it. Sometimes it could be 50%, could be 10%, whatever. And that's how most people do their joint ventures, or they do it with affiliate commissions. And I used to do it that way too. For the first 4 or 5 years online. And then I switched to a flat fee model. So when I work with a partner, the way that I do it is the partner pays a flat fee, and then I promote the heck out of them. It's usually for a week, although I do have smaller packages. And they keep 100% of sales. They've paid the flat fee. And there's advantages there. It's win-win, because what I find with a lot of joint ventures, people are a little bit hesitant to promote it heavily because they're not sure if they're going to be compensated for it. Or maybe they're taking standard swipe copy from the partner and just copying and pasting, sending it out, and it's not connecting because it's not their words. So when I do a joint venture, I'm being paid the flat fee for it. Doesn't mean that I can then sit on my hands and say, oh, okay, yeah, that's it. You still promote the heck out of it. You want them to get good results. But I also create all my own content for those campaigns, which I think is better. I've been doing daily emails to my list now for years. If I started just copying and pasting swipe copy, my audience could probably tell that it's not me, and it just doesn't come across the right way. So I'm a big fan of flat fee JVs. Other people swear the other way, but I've been doing it this way since 2019, and I can't see myself changing.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool model. And like you said, I feel like everybody gets to win in that, because obviously if you're putting your name on something, it's something you believe in, and then you're getting to help more people. And so
yeah, I don't take everyone on. I always use as an example, if Trojan Condoms approached me and said, hey, Marc, we'd love to do a joint venture. I guess safe sex is good, so maybe I should do it, but it doesn't really connect with my audience of coaches, right? So it's got to be something that's for coaches, something that's good because my name's attached to it. And then I try to keep it something that's not too similar to one that I just did. So if I did a JV around YouTube ads. Someone that does YouTube ads like a month ago, and now someone else approached me. I probably wouldn't do it right away because it's quite close. So I like to have a little bit of breathing room there. But yeah, I try to encourage not just coaches, online entrepreneurs to do more of those. I have a coaching program where I help people set theirs up because it's an untapped revenue stream. And it's something that you get to meet great people. You also get to mix up your content. Sometimes it can get boring talk about our own stuff every single day. I don't know if you find that, but where I do daily email stuff, if I was talking about me for 365 days a year, I might get a little bit sick of it, and people could too. So that's why I get to splice in some partner stuff as well, just to mix it up.
Yeah. We've got a nice chuckle out of, sometimes I get tired of hearing myself, for sure. And it's like,
I hate the sound of my voice too. I don't re-listen to my podcasts usually. I guess everyone hates the way they sound, or a lot of people do. But I've already heard my jokes, lame jokes on my show and everything else. So I don't want to be. I don't get how some hosts will re-listen to their show 6-7 times, some episodes, and they get really worked up over, at the 15-minute, 27-second mark, they mispronounced a word, or they said or there's a mosquito buzzing in the room. It's like, drive yourself nuts. Just publish it. Don't overthink it.
Oh my gosh, yes. I could count on one hand and still have fingers left over how many times I've listened to my own podcast or watched my own videos or whatever, because it's like I've already seen that. And I'm sure there's value in reflection, but man, I'm not a perfectionist in that vein, at least.
You can't be. No, you can't be online. And I try to beat the perfectionism out of my clients, because I've worked with a lot of perfectionists. Yeah. And I tell them, you're going to have to move quicker. You're going to have to throw some spaghetti at the wall, so to speak, see what sticks, or break some eggs to make an omelet, whatever metaphor you want to use. But I tell them, if you're a perfectionist and it's taking you weeks to do a podcast episode, get it just right, you're going to get run over. You got to take action. What did they say? The universe loves speed, not to get all woo woo, but I do think there's something to that. And you can't be a perfectionist online. It just won't work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, and too, you kind of like outdate yourself when you do that. Like, the world continues to revolve around us when we stop and just continue to try to rework something that it's not that important. It's kind of like personal inflation, almost eats us up. So,
there's a nasty word of the year, inflation.
Yeah, there's plenty of that going around. I want to shift gears for a second and talk about one of the areas that, like, personal example too, is just like the fees that we charge as coaches. And I've had this conversation with other people, or just helping them create clarity, and really just charging what you're worth, and really figuring out how to identify that. And so I'm sure you've had that conversation 1,001 times and probably more. So I love your perspective.
So I encourage coaches to regularly increase their fees, whether it be every 6 months. That's kind of a nice number to reevaluate. Hopefully they're going in the right direction up. It's tough, because I always say you want to feel good about the fee you're charging, because if you're charging a fee and you're not feeling it totally, like, for example, if I came out there and said, hey, Kevin, I'm announcing on the show today, I've got a new coaching offer and I'm charging $100 million a year for people to work with me. Now, maybe someone who's watching this wants to pay that. I'll give my PayPal. You can put it on the show notes page. But I'm not feeling $100 million, right? And that's going to translate across. And, to use it as another example, of coaches know that they should be increasing their package fee to $5,000 or $10,000. They're just not feeling it. You have to hit that sweet spot where you're confident with it. It's a little bit of a Jedi mind trick. You got to convince yourself. Once you convince yourself, it's easier to convince others that you're worth it. It's one of the reasons I like having a group program in your back pocket. So if you're charging, let's say, one-on-one, a good amount for your coaching, and someone's it's not in their budget, they say, oh, Kevin, I just can't do that. I can't swing it now, or whatever. Then you can say, well, hey, look, I have a way that you can work with me for half of the investment of the one-on-one. It's a small, intimate group program. Would you like to hear more about it? I've never had anyone say, no, Mark, I don't want to hear anything about it. So you don't have to negotiate and let people beat you up on your one-on-one fees because you have another option for them. It's like having a few menu choices. You don't want to have too many. You don't want to have 100 choices, but it doesn't hurt to have a few options.
I think that's really good advice too. And obviously the second piece of that would be, you can't have the one-on-one the same as the group coaching, Like if it's
Yeah,
priced the same,
makes no sense.
yeah, that's confusing. And
Hmm.
yeah, that's it's people have such a weird sticking point around money, and I have too. You know, it's like they'd rather tell you what's going on in the bedroom sometimes than the checking account.
Yeah, well, I've had a couple interviews on my podcast that stood out, and these are with really successful online people. And I remember one of them told me she had a six-figure launch, but she was still turning the thermostat down in her rooms to keep the heat down because for years she grew up poor and struggled and everything. So for her, she was just conditioned to keeping the heat down to save a few dollars a month, even though she'd had a huge launch. There's another one, and I remember that he had a big launch, and whenever he went into a department store, clothing store, whatever, he naturally gravitated towards the discount rack, the sales rack. And he's like, this is stupid. You know, I just made $100,000 or whatever. And here I am trying to save a few dollars on this and that. And I can't remember if it was that guest or if it was a different one that wanted to buy a nice toolbox from like Home Depot or whatever. It was like, I don't know, $500. And he was beating himself up over it, even though he was doing really well with his business. And it's interesting with money, all these old things that may have been buried away, they're under the surface and they've been there for decades, can come crawling up. Even if you're doing super well in business, there's still going to be some of those weird feelings about money.
Yeah, man, it's so weird. Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to those episodes. That's really interesting to me.
I can't remember. I wish I knew which ones. Don't. I have 845 episodes, so don't listen to all of them. I'll try to remember who. I know who the female one is with the heat. I'm pretty sure, but it's the other one I got to check on.
Yeah, and you've been busy. 800 episodes. How long have you been doing your podcast?
November 2014. So now it was a daily show for the first year. That's how we got up to the first 300 and some really quickly. It's been a weekly frequency for years. So I did the opposite. A lot of times people might start with a show a week and then they bump it up to 2 or 3 and then they may go more. I went 7. And then after a year, I went down to 5, Monday to Friday. Then I went down to 3, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then I went to Mondays, which it's at now. And it's been like that for me, that's a good pace. But what I did is I took the energy that I was pouring into daily podcasts, shifted it to daily emails because I'm a big fan of daily emails. And I found for me, anyone who does a podcast, not to knock if someone's doing a daily show, I wasn't getting 7 times the return doing a daily show versus a weekly show. The shows didn't have enough time to breathe because it would go out one day, then all of a sudden a brand new one the next day or whatever. And I do like the weekly frequency.
And that's a lot of pressure too, just having like 7 days a week every day. And that's amazing that you kept it up consistently for 1 week, much less a year. So
there's an example. I was very naive and I didn't know what I didn't know. So in 2014, when I was getting started, decided to launch a podcast. And I'm the type of person, I don't spend a year or years researching something. And this goes back to the perfectionist thing. And I said, I'm going to launch a show. And I joined the program John Lee Dumas and Kate had for Podcasters Paradise. And John Lee Dumas hosts Entrepreneur on Fire, EO Fire, and he was doing daily. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, John's doing daily. I'll do daily as well. You know, not knowing that was kind of crazy. And I think he's now scaled it back as well. I don't think he does daily anymore with it. But if you had told me back in November 2014, oh, you'll be approaching 1,000 episodes, I would have got freaked out. It just would have been overwhelming. And it really is true what they say about a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And that's why I tell people, don't put pressure on yourself. Get out there, get started, be consistent. You probably see this. You see so many podcasters that start with a bang at the very beginning. They're releasing all these shows and they're excited. They're talking it up. Then after a couple weeks, maybe it's a couple months, starts to drop off. They start to pod fade, so to speak, if they're not getting the kind of clients or business they thought from it. And then it's kind of in limbo. So I think you're much better going with a little bit less of frequency, at least a week, you know, if you want to do 2 a week, whatever, but don't try to do daily and then burn yourself out.
Yeah, that's hard. And especially if you're trying to edit yourself and do all that too. I mean,
yeah, because you got your other business as well. You've got to get clients and then you have to fulfill those engagements, you know, and the coaching relationships. Now, that being said, if someone approached me with like a Joe Rogan style contract and said, hey, Marc, I'll pay you hundreds of millions of dollars for a daily show, I would chain myself to the laptop. Okay, here we go. You know, let's do it. But I'm just kidding. It's just, that's what I would find is you have to find what works for you, and you don't want to do something just because you think you have to be pumping out. I'm really big on putting out a lot of content, but it also has to be good content and content that you enjoy, and not just blasting it out for the sake of blasting it out.
Yeah, I think like I follow you on a couple different channels, and I always appreciate you have a really good wit, and I think it aligns pretty well with the way I see the world. So you always
Oh, thanks.
your perspective is a little salty but pretty funny, and that's it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch your content. Man, let's.
Well, everyone in the online space, not everyone, but there are a lot of people who are very corporate speak. Maybe they're coming from corporate America, or they're afraid of what there's someone they sat next to in grade 10 English classes on their Facebook. So they're afraid of what they say because of that person from that long ago, what they're going to think. And well, I found with my emails, when I started to get better results is when I switched to a daily frequency, because email used to be inconsistent, and then the other thing was my old emails were boring. I said I'm just gonna take the filter off and write like I speak, and sometimes it could be a little salty or push the boundaries, but I would rather do that because people are already getting enough boring emails. So sometimes I get in trouble, like, the subject line, I might get a few replies and people saying, that's not cool. Over really, I think, silly stuff, by the way. Earlier, was it this one or I did another interview last night. I mentioned that there's more than one way to skin a cat when building a coaching business. And someone who was like, I don't know if they're with PETA or something, but they replied and they're quite offended. And I said, I wasn't literally meaning skin a cat. I thought that people knew the saying. But stuff like that, and that's another lesson. You can't be overly concerned what people think, or you drive yourself crazy online. You just can never keep everyone happy.
Yeah. Well, then people are going to judge what they don't understand. And so if you're being creative, a lot of times people aren't going to understand that. And, so what? It's none of my business what other people think, right? Oh.
Well, I'm in Canada, but you're US. You guys had your Thanksgiving recently, and I put out it was actually a short podcast that was selling, and I put it out on Thanksgiving Day, and I had someone in my Facebook group that took offense to that. He said, "Oh, really, Mark, selling on Thanksgiving?" And I was going to say, well, technically it's not my Thanksgiving, but even if I was in the States that day, that's the issue. The problem with a lot of coaches is that they're looking for excuses not to sell their services. Oh, it's Thanksgiving, I can't do that. It's a weekend, I don't want to bug people on the weekend. It's too close to Christmas, so I can't put out a salesy type thing. And they're looking for every excuse to not make an offer. And that's not good either. So I offer 365 days a year. I mean, the invite might be for them to check out a podcast interview or blog post or something like that. But I'm always giving them invite to take the next step into my world one way or another. And there's very few times, what I would say with the Thanksgiving one, if it was 9/11, it's an hour after that terrible, terrorist attack happened, I wouldn't then be, hey, I got a sale going on, you know what I mean, for whatever. You have to use common sense, but I don't think Thanksgiving is unreasonable. I said to the person, do you also troll those who are doing Black Friday sales?
That's what I was thinking when you were saying that. I was like, that's like the biggest sales day of the year right after. So they're talking about it all day anyway. So
yeah, it's exactly, and you can't get too worked up, I now that being said, I didn't like kick him out. A few people messaged me, oh my God, Mark, I can't believe that person said something. I'm like, oh, I don't have such thin skin. If someone says that, I'm like, oh, I'm booting you out of my Facebook group or whatever. I just thought it was kind of silly. Yeah. To each your own.
Yeah, whatever. So let's shift gears. What does freedom mean to you here on the Unlock Your Freedom podcast?
Freedom. There's a quote from Bob Dylan. It's actually the quote's about success, but I think it's equally applicable to what you just asked. And Dylan's quote about success, when someone asked him, he said, "Success is being able to get up in the morning, go to bed at night, and do what I wanted to do in between." I'm paraphrasing. I'm sure I butchered it a little bit, but I think it's the same way with freedom. What's your version of freedom? What I find and this is the reason I love online business, is at maximum freedom. Doesn't mean that I'm working 4-hour work weeks, because I'd be going crazy working just 4 hours a week, but I can work when I feel inspired. And then there's other times when I just don't have it. And a lot of what I'm doing is content creation. If I don't have it, that's going to bleed over. It's not going to be good results with the emails I'm writing or whatever I'm doing. So sometimes, like the other evening, I just shut it down. I say shut it down early. I was like, going to work at like 8 o'clock, and I do a couple hours before bed. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not feeling it tonight. And this is funny. It's I don't recommend you sit around playing video games all day, but I've been playing the newest Spider-Man game for PlayStation 5. So I said, you know what? The citizens of New York need me. I'm going to go swing around the buildings in New York and rescue these poor citizens. They need me too. No, which it's funny because we need to be able to turn our brains off a little bit in business, and that's the issue I have. Is my business brain tends to be on a lot. So a lot of people when they're the struggle they have is turning Netflix off and opening their laptop to work. Whereas entrepreneurs, our issue is we don't want to turn Netflix on, or turn Netflix on and keeping the laptop closed is our challenge, because you always feel like you have to multitask and everything. So I'd say find a few hobbies, and I joke, but yeah, I'll sometimes play for half an hour before bed, play a video game just so I'm thinking of something other than business, or I'll watch something. And then what happens, even without it trying, is I get ideas for content or for programs or something from a series or a movie I'm watching. So I guess you can't always turn your brain off anyways.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. That's like an incubation period or something when you step away like that and do something else you enjoy that doesn't require this intensity. What about books? What's a favorite book to read or recommend or give away?
Geez, I've got a lot. The go-to. I know this isn't terribly original. Think and Grow Rich, I think, is definitely up there. It's a classic. One that I mention often because people don't know this one as much is Thick Face Black Heart by Chin-Ning Chu, and that was written in the '90s, and more people are finding out about it. I gift it to a lot of my clients and stuff, but it's not really well known. What I've been doing lately is I've been starting to read, and I've been doing this for years, but more biographies and autobiographies mixed in with the personal development. I don't know about you. Sometimes if you're reading all self-help books all the time and stuff, it's a little too much, if that's all you're reading. But if you're reading some good autobiographies, you can learn just as much from that, or biographies. I just got the new book David Petraeus wrote about war, the history of war from World War II up to Ukraine, and that's called Conflict. That's an interesting book. Just finished reading a couple books. There's Jumpman I have back there, which is all around Michael Jordan, his rise, and then also the marketing and stuff like that. And then that book got me into what Phil Jackson's 11 Rings book.
That's
Phil Jackson
one.
as Jordan. Yeah, and I love The Last Dance on Netflix. That series with the Bulls' final season of their big dynasty. So I'm almost finished the Phil Jackson one, and he's an interesting guy. Like it's really cool what he did to kind of pull those Bulls teams together too. So I have a really broad mix. Full disclosure, I don't read a lot of fiction. I'm trying to do a bit more of it. I've read maybe 5 fiction like novels this year, but it's mostly all business self-help or biography, autobiography.
Yeah, man, that Phil Jackson's 11 Rings, and he's got another one. I can't remember what it is, but he's a really interesting guy, and just
yes,
I found it fascinating. I'm like, how do you bring all those massive egos together and get them moving in one direction? And he's just 11 rings. I mean, that's amazing that he's created such high levels of success over and over again.
It's crazy. Well, he's very Zen, of course, and then he's got Native American rituals he incorporates into it. Things like in the practice with the Bulls, they get them turn the lights off, on the court, and they're playing basketball in the dark, which seems dangerous if you're, I'd be afraid Michael would get hit in the head with the ball or get knocked in the eye or something. But yeah, some really interesting ways to do it. And he wasn't your typical coach screaming, the real commanding type or whatever. He had a good way of leading where he gave them some space there as well versus some of the other coaches in the NBA or Bobby Knight, like throwing chairs and stuff in college. Rest in peace. I guess he passed away recently, but he had an interesting way of running a team, and obviously the proof's in the pudding where he has 11 rings. So, hey, it works.
Yeah, he definitely knows how to win. That's for sure. All righty, man. Well, let's get you on your way. Where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you?
The main site's naturalborncoaches.com. You can check out the website, get on my email list there. The Facebook group, we'd love to have you in. That's thecoachingjungle.com, thecoachingjungle.com, and everywhere else, all the socials and all that fun stuff. But those are 2 of the big places.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I know you've got a lot going on, obviously, and I appreciate you just coming and sharing with me. It was fun to get to connect with you and see you again. It's been a couple of years, so thanks for.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Well, hope you stay warm up there, and you guys, thanks for listening in. And go check out Marc. He's a great guy, and he can take you anywhere you want to go.
Alrighty, you guys, thanks for making it through to the end of the Unlock Your Freedom podcast with us. Really grateful to have amazing listeners like you. Thank you guys again for listening. We love you, and we'll see you next time inside the Unlock Your Freedom podcast with Kevin Kepple.